Hello everybody, Jack the Jobber back again, this time with my thoughts on WWE Clash in Italy. Now the first thing to say is that the crowd, and I want to make this very clear what I'm saying, that crowd in Turin deserved more. There's a slight difference, I think, between saying that a crowd deserved more and a crowd deserved better. And I think more specifically in this case, they deserved more from WWE. I've already talked before about how 5 matches on a show makes it feel really stretched and makes the ads feel even more overpowering than they typically are and everything. But I think this goes further than that. I don't think they just deserve more in terms of the quantity of matches. I think they deserve more in terms of the match's ambition, or the ambition of the booking overall. This felt like just a stop on the road for WWE, setting up things down the line. By and large, there was a couple of things that deserve attention, but by and large, they deserve more, in my opinion. And again, I want to stress more rather than better, because I think a lot of the wrestlers turned in decent to very good performances. I don't really think anybody had a shocker. There was no matches where it was like, oh my God, this is dreadful. No, everybody tried their best with what they were given. I just don't know if what they were given was very worthwhile at all. And I think the booking wasn't just a bit of a letdown for the fans. I think it was a letdown for a lot of the wrestlers as well. For example, at WrestleMania, we saw Gunther, Jacob Fatu, and Femi all pick up big wins over bigger, more established or longer tenured names in WWE. Yes, Gunther in particular maybe has gained more clout, more notoriety over retiring John Cena and AJ Styles, but he still picked up a big win over Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. That has to count for something. Jacob Fatu, big win over Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania. Femi, the biggest win of all against Brock Lesnar. All 3 of those guys lost on tonight's pay-per-view, or PLE. All 3 of them. What does that mean? And I guess in 2 of those cases, the story probably isn't over quite yet. Femi's loss is clearly setting up a 3rd match. Gunther's loss is clearly hinting at a rematch at some point as well. Jacob Fatu. What were they doing? To me, this whole show felt either like a step back or no step at all. Just WWE kind of spinning their wheels, with one kind of notable exception, but that's 1 out of the 5 matches on the show. Right, let's just talk about the card anyway, and let's begin by talking about Cody Rhodes versus Gunther, the opener for the WWE title, Cody defending, of course. The action I thought was absolutely fine. Some exchanges were particularly quite nice. Gunther anticipating Cody's power slam, for example. The sleeper hold stuff. Those were the best moments of the match for me, because the sleeper has been well established now as so devastating a move in Gunther's arsenal. It's what he's used to retire John Cena and AJ Styles. It's what he's used to win huge matches so far. So when Cody's clamped in it, and Cody's a good babyface seller, of course, as well. When Cody's clamped in that sleeper hold, you think, there's possibly a moment of jeopardy, or you should think that. But in the wider context of this match at Clash in Italy, I don't know if the jeopardy was quite there. Not the fault of the wrestlers. I'll explain. I think the moment this match was announced as the show opener, Gunther had no chance. It was very, very apparent that Cody would be retaining, to the extent that I actually thought that Gunther would win heading in. And then as soon as the weekend began, and whenever they announced that it was going to be the opener, I was like, they're not going to throw away a massive title change on the opener of a PLE. I was very disappointed though, because I think that as great a babyface champion as Cody is, and as much as he fulfills WWE's role as their ambassador, he is exactly the type of guy they want to be like another John Cena, doing all the media appearances, being very charming in public and all that sort of stuff. And Cody's brilliant at that kind of side of it. He's very likable off screen. But I think on screen his booking has stalled. And I think most people would be willing to admit that now. And again, I don't know if that's really Cody's fault. I think that the creative team feel like they're spinning their wheels with a lot of wrestlers, and Cody Rhodes is absolutely one of them. You know a wrestler it doesn't feel like they're spinning their wheels with? Gunther, who has possibly been the best or the strongest booked superstar in WWE over the course of 2026 so far. Him or Oba, probably. And this defeat, as fine as the match was, and it was 2 guys who know how to work a good match, and they worked a good match. It wasn't like Cody's best match ever or anything. It wasn't Gunther's best match ever or anything like that. It was perfectly serviceable. But what does this loss do for the challenger? Nothing at all. And I get that you could argue that the finish gives us a little bit less cause to despair. Maybe I'm being a little bit too melodramatic because, hey, Gunther had his leg under the ropes during the final pinfall. Yeah, I get that. I do. I think it never really felt like Gunther was going to win this match. Again, even when he had that sleeper locked in. And even though he is now probably going to get a rematch at some point and may well be the man to dethrone Cody Rhodes, I think this loss has probably done quite a bit of damage to Gunther's momentum, sadly. It's not a loss of momentum that, is gone forever. I have no doubt that Gunther will be able to get it back, but it's such an unnecessary obstacle in his route to the top. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, but what was the alternative, Have Gunther beat Cody here in a match that didn't really feel like it deserved such a big title change, given its position on the card and everything? What would you have done instead? Well, I would rather they just didn't book Gunther as Cody's opponent in the first place for this show. What's wrong with building him up and then having him beat Cody at SummerSlam or whatever, but at the first time of asking? Why do we need him to lose this one? And lose it under questionable circumstances, because I've already explained, it doesn't make Gunther look very good, despite everything he's done in 2026 so far. Do you know who else it doesn't really make look very good? Cody Rhodes. And that's your top baby. That's QB1. In winning in this way, Cody didn't, heroically rise up to defeat the bigger man, or he didn't tactically work out a way to chop Gunther down and use his size and strength against him. No, Cody got lucky. How is that going to make us want to cheer him more? Because he does get mixed reactions. The crowd were on his side in Italy, to be fair. But, it's a real problem now. Cody does get mixed reactions a lot wherever he goes. And this isn't the remedy. What the hell? I guess they left a lot on the table for future matches, I suppose. Anyway, Rhea Ripley versus Jade Cargill followed that. One positive, I do feel like they were given the time they should have been given at WrestleMania. So even though I wasn't a huge fan of them just running this match back, at least they got the time they deserved. Unfortunately, I wasn't really grabbed by the action. I think it was a little bit clunky at times, maybe a little bit too ambitious with some of the counters and reversal sequences and stuff. I just don't know if they've got brilliant chemistry. At certain times, it did feel a little stop-start or a little disjointed. I don't think it was like the worst match ever or anything. I'm not saying that. I just think they maybe just don't work that well together. But unfortunately, the thing that this match may well be most remembered for is a botch involving somebody not even really in the match themselves. As B-Fab and Michin came down to help Jade, to interfere on her behalf, and they did so, and I wish I could remember which one of them it was. I'll pop an image on screen if I can find one, of who tried to sneakily put Jade's boot on the ropes to break a pinfall, but out of the view of the referee, and screw Rhea out of the win. And whichever one of them it was, I don't know if Jade didn't dangle her leg obviously enough. I don't know if they timed it wrong. I don't know if the ref counted too quickly. I don't know whose fault it was, but it was one of those excruciating moments where the pinfall isn't going to be broken up quickly enough, and the ref has to go 1, 2, all the foot's on the ropes, and the match just has any momentum it has is sucked away. And then, fortunately, I suppose, that was not the big be-all and end-all finish of the match. We had Charlotte Flair make a surprise appearance. Nice pop from the crowd. Oh, that's a big star making a surprise appearance in this match. Fair enough, on a show she wasn't announced for. Charlotte Flair comes out of the crowd, takes out B-Fab and Michin, and then does the same thing. Helps Rhea survive by putting her leg on the ropes. Now, okay, I will say, again, it's not really making your big baby faces look like big baby faces. I get that Rhea, in being benefited from Charlotte's assistance, is kind of fighting fire with fire. Turnabout is fair play. That's what I meant to say. But Rhea did, if Charlotte hadn't been there, Rhea would have lost the title. Doesn't make her look as good as she often does. Doesn't make her look as good as she should. Rhea wins, as I think most people expected. It was a rematch from WrestleMania. One of several rematches on this show. Oba versus Brock, Jacob versus Roman, and I've just realised, Saul versus Becky as well. All rematches from something, whether it was Mania, Backlash, or recently Saturday Night's main event. Yeah, the only match on this card that wasn't like a very recent redo of another match, I think was Cody versus Gunther, which is obviously a match that's happened before, but at least not in so recent memory. Wow, now that I think of it like that, they really did not put a lot of imagination into this. This was just a pay-per-view to get out of the way, wasn't it? Next up, Femi versus Brock Lesnar. I mean, Very exciting in the moment, of course. Very exciting indeed. 4 F5s off the bat, and Oba kicks out, and maybe a minor complaint here. Did anyone else feel like the announce team completely undersold this moment? Oba's just taken 4 F5s, and then the announce team are like, oh wow, Oba's pretty resilient there. No, you should be losing your mind. But no, Oba's pretty, look at the resilience there of Oba Femi. We've learned this about him. Shut up. Just kicked out of 4 F5s. Anyway, yeah, the action of this match was very exciting in the moment, devoid of all other context. Match of the night, hands down. It's hard to deny. However, given the booking and everything, it's not a match out of context, is it? So, on the whole, it's my match of the night in a vacuum. It's my match of the night in terms of just the sheer action. If I'd never seen Brock versus Oba before, it's easily my match of the night. But that's not reality, is it? Before I get on to those complaints, I like the announce table spot, and I liked the bit after it with Oba seeming like he was going to get counted out. They timed this really well. Then he stood up like Jason Voorhees to beat the count and advance on Lesnar. And for a split second, I was like, maybe this was all worth it. Maybe this is one of those rematches that actually, I'm glad it took place. Maybe they're going to do it. No, Lesnar got the win instead with, I think, a total of, 7 total F5s, I believe. Look, it was a fun match, as I say. It's a match that you could argue never ever needed to exist. Never needed to exist for several reasons as well. 1, it's uncomfortable whenever Lesnar's on screen, of course. 2, they'd given themselves the perfect retirement for Brock Lesnar. He never needed to appear again. It felt like such a genuine moment. I don't know if Brock changed his mind or they convinced him with more money or if it was a work for the next season of Unreal. Oh, you all thought that Brock had retired, but he hadn't. Yeah. But whatever the reason, they could have had this never happen and it would have been absolutely fine. And the third reason this never needed to happen, you've now given Oba Femi a big loss. Yes, to Brock Lesnar. Oh my God, a loss to Brock Lesnar is not something that should majorly stall anybody's career, of course not. But why not just have Oba beat Brock and leave it alone? That was perfect at Mania. That was perfect not only for an exit for Lesnar, it was a perfect way for Oba to get this big win. Now at least I hope they do, now if they book a third match, right, a rubber match, maybe at SummerSlam, yeah, Oba will almost certainly win that one. But what does that achieve more than just that win at Mania would have? What, now he's won 2 of 3 matches against Lesnar? Is that really better than just beating him so decisively and it's 1-0 and that's the rivalry done? I much would have preferred that. The second last match of the night, Becky Lynch defending the women's IC title against Ruca. This one, then, was probably my match of the night. Because even though I enjoyed the action of Lesnar versus Oba more than any other match on this show, at least this one felt very worthwhile from a booking perspective. You could argue this was the only match that felt worthwhile in that regard on this whole show. And that's because it at least helped somebody get over, or more over than they were before, or at least implied that there's some sort of progression on their journey rather than a step back. And that was Ruca, who beat Becky Lynch here, catching her kind of out of nowhere with a Soul Snatcher that, people who've watched a lot of Ruca before will have seen coming, but I think by the sound of the crowd, it achieved its goal. It caught most people by surprise. They had a decent back and forth, I don't think it's going to be like a match of the year contender or anything like that, but at least they gave it a real good go. Becky was doing her healing, her stooging, everything she's so good at to get the crowd not only to hate her, but the ultimate goal of cheering her opponent. And I think she was successful there. It carried on the little rivalry she has with Jessica Carr, the referee. That was quite entertaining too. And Sol was given the big moments to shine. She was given the big spots, the big gymnastic, athletic stuff that she can do. Actually, Becky early on got one of those nice moments with a Soul Snatcher reversed quite seamlessly into a submission, into an armbar, I believe. That was very nice. But then Becky herself later on appeared to go for the Soul Snatcher. I would have paid so much money to see Becky Lynch attempt a full Soul Snatcher, but Ruca cut her off before she could complete the rotation. It would have been amazing, but then it was followed up very nicely with Soul interrupting the move, or the attempt at the move, and then hitting the manhandle slam on Becky, which was cool. A nice false finish there. One that maybe made us think, oh, if that hasn't got the win, is Becky going to retain? No, as I mentioned, Sol ultimately gets the win with that Soul Snatcher, and I think this was the one saving grace, I suppose, of the show from a booking perspective, not from a wrestling perspective. Again, the wrestlers all tried their very best from a booking perspective. And I don't mean to, I'm not, obviously this isn't like a latter day Russo era WCW pay-per-view in terms of bad booking. It wasn't that type of bad booking. It was just flat. It was just ambitionless for the most part, but not this match. Sol Ruca, a great candidate for the women's IC title. Becky Lynch can be used to get any up-and-coming babyface over, and this completed the task, this completed the goal it set out to achieve. So that's good. Good job. I nearly said that's an up there. Oh my God. Here's what I know. And finally, the main event. It was a very Roman Reigns main event. Very, very much so. Roman Reigns versus Jacob Fatu. A rematch from Backlash, of course, which Roman won, but had to bend the rules to do so. Now, tell me why. Tell me why, then. They introduced, of course, tribal combat rules for this match. Basically, anything goes, no DQ. And what has it proved, then? Who has this helped? So, at Backlash, Roman had to slightly bend the rules to beat Jacob, implying that, wow, Jacob's so strong. How is Roman going to beat him without bending those rules? Now let's take all those rules away. And then Roman does similar stuff to what he did in the first match with the exposed turnbuckles and everything. But obviously this time, there's no bending of the rules because the rules don't exist. So Roman just does all that and wins anyway. What? How is that compelling? How does that help? How does that help Roman? Like I've said about Rhea and Cody and everything, how does that help your big star look good? And how on earth does it help the challenger? How does it help Jacob Fatu? I know there were stories heading in that Jacob may be nursing some kind of injury. There were reports that the match might not even go ahead as advertised. They might need to swap somebody in. So I can even kind of overlook the fact that despite this being a big no DQ, no rules match, I can kind of overlook the fact that they played it safe in terms of the big spots. This wasn't a patch on the danger of even Jacob's match against Drew at WrestleMania. This wasn't a patch on, oh God, how many no DQ Roman Reigns matches have we seen? At least something really cool or visually impressive. They, for 99% of the match, played it pretty safe here. And that's fine, especially if Jacob's nursing an injury. I can overlook that, as I've said. And they did a cool spot. They did the crowd barricade spot was good, especially with two of the security guards being trapped underneath. That was a good spot, I will admit. The rest of it felt, and this term is overused by people who critique wrestling matches and stuff. I've overused it myself. But this very much felt a bit like a house show street fight. And when you extend that to the whole pay-per-view, Clash in Italy did feel a little bit, at times, a bit house showy. A bit of a glorified house show, as is the term so often used. There were elements you wouldn't see in a typical house show street fight, of course. There was tactical stuff like Roman targeting Jacob's hand so he couldn't properly apply the tongue and death grip, hitting him with a toolbox. That was pretty good, to be fair. There was the low blow kick out moment, which I found very bizarre. Did you see that? Right towards the end, Roman does that thing that he used to do when he was a full heel champion, where he'd do a kick out and low blow his opponent deliberately in the process of kicking out. Jacob didn't really sell it, kind of went to sell it, didn't sell it. The announce team got confused and were I think we might have to wait for a replay, but I think Roman reminiscent of his bad old days when he wasn't such a good guy. And I'm if the announce team can't tell what you're doing, then what was the plan here? And even then, once the replays happened and we cut back to the live action, Jacob's still kind of tentatively attempting to sell the low blow and then thinking, no, don't really care. I don't understand what that was about. And I'm a big fan of Jacob. And you know what? I feel really bad for him here. I feel really bad for him. As I've said, I can overlook the match being a little bit safe, a little bit PG. I get it. Especially if he was nursing an injury. What I can't overlook is the decision to have him wrestle Roman again and lose again. And what does that do? Bit of a weird aftermath. This whole show was a little bit slapdash, really. Apart from the women's IC title. They had a clear plan, they executed it, Soul's over, she's the new champion, well done. This aftermath was so all over the place. Roman's swearing every time he gets near a microphone. They're having to cut out audio and everything. But also, right, so then Solo and his boys show up in the crowd afterwards. And it's oh, he's going to be Roman's next opponent. I'm what are we doing here? Solo's already been, he's not He's not been elevated to that level. He's a really good mid-card heel Solo. I really like him in that role. He's surprisingly very funny. He's way more natural at it than just being like the menacing silent enforcer of the bloodline as he was. But now we're expected to take him seriously once again. Is this going to just be Roman's thing until SummerSlam? He's just going to spin his wheels against people like Solo. Again, no offense to Solo. But that was like kind of set up by the aftermath. Then Roman and the Usos have come out to celebrate with Roman. Roman and the Usos leave. They head back up the ramp. And I think Jacob is going with them. Because one of the Usos is like, yeah, come on, Us. And Jacob follows them up the ramp. And like, was the implication there that Jacob was about to join Solo and them in the crowd? And it's like a big civil war in the Samoan dynasty. Maybe. They need to ram that home. They need to really tell us what's going on. There is Monday Night Raw coming up. So I guess we'll find out a more clear answer there. Maybe. Yeah, apologies for not really knowing it. I'll watch it back after this and I'm sure I'll get the meaning of that aftermath of the main event. Or will I? Maybe. They need to make that very clear on Raw. They need to ram that home, as I say. And I hope they do. My general summary then. People have been done a disservice tonight. Jacob's a big one. Oba's a big one. Gunther's a big one as well. Saul, fair play. Saul Ruca came out of this a winner. Good for her. Good for Becky Lynch for putting her over in such a good way. But the rest of the show, it was just either a bad booking decision or a nothing booking decision. And that crowd, that red hot crowd in Turin, deserved so much more. Thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry for the tone of this video. It's been hot outside. I know I'm wearing this, it's stupid, but like even before, when I wasn't wearing it, it's been a hot few days and I'm not used to it. I'm not used to it up here in the northeast of England. Thank you for watching and take care of yourselves. And let me know what you thought. What was your match of the night? What were your best parts of the night? What was the worst booking sin committed on the night? Let me know all that in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.